A Russian wedding begins with the crack of opened bottles, because it is vodka that plays the leading role there, not the bride. The tables bend under the weight of glasses and snacks, but the most important thing is not the food. It is the pace of drinking, fast, merciless, and mandatory. Whoever does not drink the first shot to the health of the newlyweds risks social execution and stares sharper than a stiletto in the mother-in-law's shoe. The second shot is still a joke, the third is already sacred, and refusing the third is like spitting on the nation's godmother, meaning tradition. Alcohol flows in liters, and the revelers, aunts, uncles, and neighbors, disappear into the whirl of toasts, which no one counts, because no one can see anymore. When someone collapses under the table, the party does not stop. On the contrary, it is a sign that the celebration has reached the proper tempo and is entering a higher level. Between the next rounds of vodka, heavy plates of food land on the table, dishes that look as if they were prepared for the siege of a fortress. Shuba salad, a layered bomb of beets, herring, and mayonnaise, takes up half the table, and right next to it lies Olivier, the Russian version of vegetable salad. Alongside are hot cutlets, roasted meats, pickled cucumbers, and buckets of herring, whose smell competes with the fumes of spirits rising above the table. The food is made by an army of grandmothers and aunts, not from catering, but from the old school of cooking, where quantity matters, not aesthetics. Guests eat greedily, drink mercilessly, and then, as if someone had thrown a grenade, games begin that push past the limits of reason. Onto the stage steps the tamada, master of ceremonies, entertainer, and provocateur in one, who runs the wedding like a front-line battle for attention. The games are often drunken, thoughtless, and absurd. No one asks for consent, and shame hides under the table, together with the half-finished glasses. The tamada knows no limits. He invents tasks that in any other context would be called public humiliation or the beginning of trauma. And then the tension begins, because a Russian wedding is not only laughter, but also a minefield of past grudges, resentments, and family wounds that open up anew. One shot too many and it starts, first with a whisper, then with shouting, and finally with fists, interrupted only by thrown plates. Fistfights are not rare. All it takes is an old grudge, a glance held 1 second too long, or the memory of something that was supposed to be kept quiet. Sometimes the trigger is money, inheritance, or who failed to come to grandmother's funeral, enough to unleash a family apocalypse. At a Russian wedding, family is sometimes the enemy, an explosive mix of people who should never sit at the same table, and certainly not with vodka. To this is added the bride ransom, a ritual in which the groom must pay to take his future wife, like goods from a warehouse. It comes with confusion, laughter, shouting, and enormous amounts of alcohol, because every obstacle on the way to the bride must be drowned with a toast. Sometimes it is not only the bride who must be ransomed, but also the witnesses, the sister, the father. Everyone wants to gain something, and the groom pays not with money, but with dignity. When the bride finally reaches the groom, the convoy begins, a column of cars honking as if the president were arriving, not a freshly married couple. The more noise, the better. Horns wail, windows are open, drivers scream, and people on the street watch with resignation or admiration. The wedding parade drives through the entire city, visiting monuments, bridges, and fountains, taking photos that will be blurry anyway from too much alcohol. At a Russian wedding there is no dress code because style depends not on the occasion but on the guest's character and whatever happened to be clean in the closet. An uncle in a stretched-out sweater and sneakers sits at the table, because after all, clothes don't drink, people do. A cousin in a tracksuit with 3 stripes dances next to an aunt in sequins, and a neighbor arrives, uninvited. It is a mix of generations, social classes, and fashion preferences where the most important thing is not how you look, but whether you can drink and party loudly. From the speakers flows Russian pop that no one knows by title, but everyone knows by chorus, because it has been played at every wedding since the times of perestroika. Suddenly, a melancholic romance is heard, squeezing tears from a grandfather, and then Kalinka bursts in, to which everyone dances as if their life depended on it. At midnight, techno comes from a disco speaker someone pulled out of a trunk, and suddenly the dance floor turns into a club for drunken shadows. Grandfathers spin pirouettes, children fall asleep under the table, and ants go wild with their hands in the air, not noticing that their shoes disappeared long ago under someone's chair. When night falls, guests start dropping like flies, not from boredom, but from exhaustion, alcohol, and overeating, because no one leaves until they drop. Some sleep in cars, with their heads against the window and jackets as pillows, others under the table, next to herring leftovers and scattered cucumbers. Still others lie on benches, huddled together like sardines, just to wait out the night and have the strength for what comes next. A wedding is not only about food and dance, it is an economic operation, where an envelope with money becomes the currency of respect and local prestige. Whoever gives too little will be remembered for generations, not by an accountant, but by ants, who count everything better than the bank. People often give more than they can, from loans, credit, or savings collected over the whole year, just not to appear stingy in front of the family. But that is still not the end. The day after the wedding begins the popravny, the second round of the same battle, only with bigger headaches and less dignity. On the table lie leftovers from the previous day. Smeared salad, cold cutlets, and bread soaked with moisture and memories. A new bottle of vodka appears out of nowhere like a relic, and anyone who manages to take another shot is hailed as a hero. Popravny are not for the weak. To survive means to earn respect. To come out whole is like passing through the front line without a scratch. And though everything already seems over, it is exactly then that legendary scenes begin, the ones that will be remembered for the next 20 years. Sometimes someone disappears. The best man who was supposed to hold the rings is found 2 days later in the neighboring village without a phone and with a hangover like a nuclear war. Sometimes the police intervene, called by neighbors who were not invited, but hurt that no one invited them. And although in the morning everyone looks like after a disaster, with smeared makeup and a hangover stronger than morality, no one regrets it. A Russian wedding is a theater of absurdity, emotions, alcohol, and tradition, where fun intertwines with chaos and love with a fist on the table.